Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Quello. I'm with Sageview Advisory Group. Hope everyone is doing well during this pandemic. We're obviously looking forward to being with everybody next year in Nashville, but today we're going to be obviously having more of a real discussion on real life challenges during retirement. You know, we spend our days talking about saving, talking about accumulating, helping our clients and plan sponsors to plan for that sunset moment when they get to kind of unplug from the workplace and live out their dreams. But with that rosy picture, you know, kind of hoping we can have a real talk discussion that, quite frankly, many aspects of it are a little depressing to look at and to think about. But I think the more we as advisors, as trusted consultants, are able to help our clients to take a realistic look and view at what's ahead of them, what they need to be thinking about, and what longevity looks like for them, I think is going to put us in a great place to be able to help and consult. By way of further introduction, I've been in the business now for 25 years doing retirement consulting. As I had mentioned, I'm with Sageview Advisory Group, managing the Austin, Texas practice, and also have a practice in our corporate location in Irvine, California. So with that, kind of this is a look at today's agenda that we'll be going over the next 25, 30 minutes or so. We'll be taking a deeper look at longevity, what that means, what some stats behind that. Healthcare costs, obviously on the rise, big subject of conversation during the debates and during this election season. Looking at, you know, some real positive topics like being alone late in life, right? Chronic illness care, you know, playing all the greatest hits of depression here. But then we'll start to look at things like protecting our legacy and looking at ageless for health and wellness to kind of round it out on a positive note. So as we get in there, obviously we've seen a lot of the data, we've seen a lot of the statistics that you know, the ladies are outliving the men. We know that's clear. I think we can anecdotally look at that if we look at our parents and grandparents. I know I've lost a parent and you know, several sets of grandparents, both on my wife's side and our side, and that typically holds true. I don't think we had one where the husband outlived the wife. Which, you know, so a lot of those statistics holds true. But just looking here, you know, depending on what year, you know, you were born, depending on what that life expectancy looked like, I think definitely we can look at a lot of the 65-year-olds today. They're definitely not retiring. Some are dying, as we saw. The great Eddie Van Halen died just last week. But 65 for him doesn't look like when I thought of my grandparents at 65, right? The guy who's still a rocker, still getting it done. You think of, you know, Tom Selleck, you think of, you know, Sylvester Stallone, a lot of these people that are, you know, extending their life expectancy, they're living longer, they're living quality of life. And, you know, we just need to think about that. Also, one of the things that I think is important, and I kind of touched on this, as we look at the longevity discussion, is to look within our own family. Does heart disease run in your family? Does cancer run in your family? What does that look like? And then begin to plan not only personally, but for your clients. Obviously, there are more individuals that will reach age 90 and older. You know, as we look at this, you know, we look at the Smuckers commercials, you know, every day they celebrate, you know, all those folks that have written in that are turning age 100. And it's definitely one of our, you know, growing segments of our population. People just, quite frankly, are living a lot longer. But obviously, you know, when we look at the number of healthy 65-year-olds today, you know, almost half of those will live to 90, almost 3 in 5, and to age 100, 1 in 14. So obviously a big drop off over that next 10 years. And then the ladies, it's 1 in 8. So, you know, we just need to be thinking about that. As I like to call this slide, you know, misery loves company. Hopefully my wife doesn't hear that. We just celebrated 24 years this summer. But obviously, for a number of healthy 65-year-old couples that are still around to age 90, one or both of them alive, 3 in 4 of those couples will make it to age 90. Both alive, 1 in 4 couples, one person alive or widowed, 2 in 4 couples. So pretty interesting. I think, when you've got the family unit together, when you've got those couples, they're probably urging that other spouse to go get that checked out. Why don't we have that looked at? And that, I think, is maybe we should call the doctor, versus when one of them is alone, you don't have that same sense of urgency or someone, taking in that data and helping you to analyze it to say, you know what, maybe this is something that we should look at. But great to see, some of the projections there and what is occurring even today. But obviously, when we look at longevity, some of the, things that prohibit an even longer life are what we've got here. Obviously, heart disease is a big one, cancer, and then there's things like dementia. Difficulty walking even a half a mile. They talk about that in those later years, how important mobility is, and to get folks walking and moving, and just getting around and not sitting around getting stiff and whatnot. And then those 2 or more ADL limitations. Now that's the activities of daily living. So that could be going to the bathroom by yourself, mobilizing, being able to get to and from the doctor's office, all those kind of things are examples of the ADLs. I know with me, heart disease runs in my family. My, grandfather died of a heart attack. My uncle died of a heart attack. My dad died of a heart attack, right? So stands to reason that needs to be something that's on my personal radar that I'm taking into account. Just to share with you all, kind of anecdotally, longevity does run in my wife's family. They live well into their 90s, but the dementia and Alzheimer's does run on her side. So one of the things I did for her for a nice 40th birthday present, since heart disease runs in my family, I'm probably going to be here one day, gone the next. But with my wife, if she's around, I feel it's my responsibility to take care of her. So for 40th birthday, I bought her a paid up single premium long-term care policy. Because longevity will be an issue for her. Healthcare costs, managing that, stay at home, making sure all of that is affordable and she's taken care of. I didn't need to buy that for me because history would show, if we look at the family tree, that there's maybe a different scenario for me, but for her, looking at her family tree, wanted to plan for that. So that's just an example of the kind of conversations maybe you're having with your plan sponsor clients or your individual wealth management clients to start to look about what does your family tree look like? What's the history? What's the likelihood of you living longer? Maybe your parents were smokers and died young, but you're not. So you can probably plan on living a little bit longer. So, some of those personal choice factors do enter into it. But we can use some of the family lineage just to draw certain conclusions as we begin to help them plan. Obviously, they say statistically your financial ability to, your peak earning, all that kind of stuff kind of tops out around age 60. And then it starts to go into a decline, right? They start to, in certain industries and whatnot, they're hiring younger workers and looking to do, forced, retirement. We saw that recently with TIA, having many of their participants take that option to go ahead and have that, early retirement. And so we need to be planning on that, right? There is obviously a major financial aspect to the longevity discussion. But something that just breaks my heart when I think about, folks that are in that senior market that are working with those individuals each and every day, that 1 in 18, there is, those seniors fall victim to financial abuse each and every year, 1 in 18. And so I think it's incumbent on each and every one of us to hold those criminals accountable and root those individuals out of our business. They have no place here. We got to take care of our seniors. We got to honor them. And one of the ways we do that is making sure they're financially protected and have the dignity that they deserve in retirement. But interestingly enough, one of the first places that any kind of financial trouble is noticed is from other financial professionals. So I think similar to working with a doctor, I think it makes sense for many of these seniors to be getting a second opinion. And sometimes that's where we notice some of these financial abuses that are taking place out there. Next, we're going to be talking about healthcare costs. Obviously, we've looked at this and we know that healthcare costs are going up. Like I mentioned, it's one of the big topics of debate in this presidential election. A lot of the stats that are out there say that, you could be looking at anywhere from 38% of your total retirement savings could be spent on healthcare costs. So that is a big factor that your participants, your plan sponsors need to be thinking about, need to be managing toward. In this illustration, estimated 280,000 average out-of-pocket medical costs. That's just a huge number to think about when you already have insurance, you're already on potentially a government plan at that point, and there's still major out-of-pocket costs that just, quite frankly, many people have not planned on, and it's just sad to see. So the more we can get in front of that as part of the planning process, some of the seminars you're doing for your clients, to touch on what a big kind of open that up and what a big area healthcare costs is as part of their overall retirement planning. And I think it'll definitely, hopefully, motivate them to save even more. The funny thing is, though, that healthier retirees generally have an even higher cumulative healthcare cost because they're more likely to live beyond the average life expectancy. They're not just keeling over and dying. They're facing that longevity risk, right? And so because they're around longer, which is a great thing, we want our clients to live a long time. They are going to incur each and every year higher and higher healthcare costs. And so that out-of-pocket healthcare spending increases, obviously, throughout those retirement years. So we just need to get them thinking about that. This one is one that hits home for us. We lost my dad, seems like yesterday, but it was just 17 years ago. And so my mom has lived alone ever since, right? They were married 2 months shy of 53 years. And so now my mom is, working on, going into her 18th year next year of living alone, right? And so what does that look like? And how are decisions made, and quality of life, and what do you do in that environment? So, and because the women outlive the men, typically it is the women who live alone, but we do see from time to time that it is the man that is sometimes alive. In my old church that we used to attend in California, there were 8 couples there, and by the end there were all 7 of the men had died, and so there were 7 women sitting there, but there was only one case, and it does follow this, where that the wife had died and the husband was left behind. And no, he's not dating any of those other women. It's all perfectly good. But anyway, it's just, some of the stats we see on this, I've seen it play out in the real world, and it is sad when we see those older people that are still, have a full, life in front of them, but they're in those twilight years. Having to spend that alone is tough. You can see the stats here of what that looks like for the men versus the women, and at what ages. But 85 plus, 1 in 2 women, facing possibly living alone. That's pretty stark. So widowhood often lasts a long time. I kind of mentioned that for a 65-year-old couple, 2 in 5 men and 3 in 5 women will eventually be widowed. But the question is, for how long? And you can kind of see the stats here, 15 years or more, 1 in 5 men. But for the ladies, 15 years or more, 3 in 10. That's just a big number. And so obviously, depending on the roles and how things were done, sometimes you've got, one spouse was handling all the finances, and when that spouse dies, how does that other spouse, if they were never officially trained on paying those bills and helping with the taxes or whatever it is, each member of the family has their roles. And so I think, looking at these stats, that's what that calls out to me, because we have seen a lot of under-equipped surviving spouses faced with some pretty tough financial situations. They're already dealing with loss, and now they're having to deal with how do I pay these bills and get all these things done that I'm not used to handling. So just another thing to talk with your clients about. On the greatest hits list of most depressing topics in the afternoon, we're going to now hit the chronic illness care. Again, we joke about that, but it's so important, to ensure this stuff, to look at it. And so the 5 W's of chronic illness care is kind of the who. How many 65-year-olds may need at least 90 days of chronic illness care later in life? For couples, 1 or both. People in 4 out of 5 couples, individuals, half of the men and 3 in 5 women will need this. Why? Life happens, accidents, strokes, Alzheimer's, arthritis, heart disease, cancer, Parkinson, all reasons why this stuff should be looked at. Again, not here to sell insurance. That's not what we do, but as part of the overall planning, I think this is an important component to look at. Obviously everyone would love to have the stay-at-home care, and so if those policies can keep your loved ones at home, obviously it's something that you want to explore. And then when is at those older ages, and typically that's for a 90-day period is all you're looking for, that chronic care for the remainder of their life. So very important to at least explore that with your client's insurance person, to take a look at that stuff, because by the time you figure out you need it, it's probably too late. So taking a look at that when they're a little younger might make some great sense as you're looking at that year-end planning. The likely need for chronic illness care later in life for average 65-year-old couple, men only 20%, women only 31%, both looking at 27%. So again, important subject matter to just at least go over with your clients and to share with them that they need to be taking steps before something happens just out of the blue. A serious condition is not always a chronic illness, so that's something to think about. Conditions that would likely not result in a chronic illness, cancer, minor stroke, heart attack, those are not going to be considered, but conditions that would result in an illness where recovery is not expected, Alzheimer's, right? A severe stroke, crippling arthritis is one we always don't think of, but it is one of those that is so important. Just to again share with you, my mom has struggled with rheumatoid arthritis for the last 40 years, but it is getting, since she just turned 88, to a place where over the next few years it's going to be very difficult for her to walk, right? So very important to see how all this plays into that, right? And then any kind of neurological condition is another one. Who will care for the elderly of tomorrow? So obviously, first and foremost, it's going to be the kids. But when we look outside of that, when we look at those, caregivers, there are a lot of communities that have these caregivers. I've learned even with my aging mother that there are different levels of caregivers. You've got those that are skilled and unskilled. In the instance of my mom, we have someone that's a caregiver from the standpoint of someone that just comes and stays there at night and watches the news and hangs out. Is not providing any services other than company, providing company so that she's not lonely. We don't think of that when we think of the elderly, but it is definitely something that's out there, and those people are paid and paid well. But then obviously once any kind of ADLs are impacted with those daily living, that's where then you have a skilled nurse come in, maybe a couple of days a week, maybe every day. And those types of services obviously cost money. So we need to think about that. There are a lot of different communities that are serving these individuals and folks. That's great. And their services are very much needed. Protecting our legacy. Now this is start to go back on the upswing, looking at your memories, traditions, kind of memorializing that. So, thinking about something like Legacy Box, maybe, as we go into the holidays, a great thing to think for an aging loved one, or to have your clients think about is trying to memorialize those old videotapes or the old photos. How do we get that onto a medium that's not going to be at risk of fire and is preserved, and to begin to then pass down those memories and traditions and begin that education process for the next generation, for them to learn about their parents, grandparents, or great grandparents. I think is awesome. Cherished possessions. I think getting in front of that and having those discussions in family heirlooms, whether that's a car or a special ring, on this side of being ill, I think is important. It's a morbid conversation to have with your kids, but I think it's one that absolutely should happen, so that there is a clear understanding of what the wishes are, and you can memorialize that, kind of, on paper, or obviously on video would be even better, and work with your attorney on some of the specifics. But also your values, beliefs, those ethical and spiritual beliefs that you want to pass down to maybe a future great grandson that you won't be around to meet. I think it's important and a great opportunity to memorialize those as well. But leading a healthy lifestyle, one that's well balanced with your diet, obviously not smoking, and continuing to do fitness. One of the things my wife and I have done during the pandemic is we doing a 4.5 mile little hike every day. Just to kind of start a day. Great time to connect. Also a great time to just be living a little bit more healthy lifestyle rather than just getting up and going right into the office. And then obviously financial, family business comes to mind. Having those conversations. Dad's running the business or mom's running the business, but they want to pass it along. Have those conversations. Work with an attorney and deal with the money issue up front. Before someone passes away, and those decisions become much tougher. Events before retirement can affect our legacy by threatening human capital. So obviously, your stocks, you can have things that come, there's financial obligations that happen. A job loss late in your life or late in career can obviously throw a huge wrench into your retirement plans. So you just need to think. You may not always be, this healthy. You may have things that come up. You may lose a job. So we need to plan for those things, so that you're not caught off guard in retirement, or your clients are not caught off guard in retirement. Other events that can affect retirement can also affect your legacy by threatening financial capital. If you plan to leave a legacy to your kids, but because of certain events that happen, chronic illness, something came up, you didn't have the appropriate insurance, you weren't factoring in inflation or taxes in the future, and now what you had planned to leave to your kids is a much smaller legacy than what you're planning. That's obviously something that you'd like to get a hold of, would like to have those conversations with an attorney prior, and not let the situational dictate what ends up happening for your heirs. Last but not least, just a quick shout out for obviously living an ageless lifestyle where you act young, you feel young, but it starts with your attitude. Good medical care, plenty of exercise, being a lifetime learner. Going back and getting another designation, continuing your educational pursuits, keeping the mind sharp and strong, eating healthier, getting plenty of sleep, and then can't stress the socialization enough. This one is so important. It's obviously been a killer during COVID, but something that I think is definitely going to be important later in life. I'll open up for any questions and hope you all enjoyed this session for today. Since there's no messages, we'll end it here, but I thank everybody for your time and wish you all the best success for 2020. We'll look forward to seeing you next year in Nashville, and take care. Godspeed.